Why does the consciousness system differentiate between being level learning and intellectual level learning? And why does only being level learning get counted as evolution towards lower entropy, whereas intellectual level learning gets seen as junk to be deleted at the end of one's experience packet? It seems to me that regardless of whether a lesson gets learned on the being level or on the intellectual level, in either case a lesson gets learned, which means that a change in consciousness, i.e., in the information system, takes place. And that change will make it such that the being who learned the lesson will make better choices in the future. Why is such learning regarded as not valuable to consciousness evolution to the point that it gets deleted at the end of an experience packet?
You've probably heard me say this a lot, but it's the difference between being kind and acting kind. One is authentic, and the other merely pretending to be authentic. Pretending to be kind is very fragile and can change to unkind in a second. It does not represent growth of the being. So that's the big issue. Is we're talking about growth, changing, a person changing, and that change has to come not in the change of its intellect, which is a very fragile thing. It doesn't really mean anything. You have to get it down to the being level of being kind. Now, okay, I've changed myself. I wasn't kind before. Now I am kind. All right, I haven't changed myself, but I'm acting kind because my culture gives me rewards for acting kind. So I collect all the rewards and I act kind, but I get in a tough situation. I'll be just as mean as the meanest guy there too, because I'm really not kind. I just act kind. You see, one is important, one is real, and the other is smoke. It's not really there. That person who's acting kind, if they got into a tough situation where it was me or them, it'd be obvious it would be them that would have the problem. The kindness isn't real. It's just pretend. So the intellectual learning is not real learning for those kinds of things. It is real learning for facts. All right, intellect learns facts, and that's real. The intellect understands that this is how something works. The intellect understands how to build a computer, how to build a bridge, how to build a hydrogen bomb. The intellect understands how to do all these things, and that matters. But it only matters here in this physical world. So the intellect learns knowledge and facts, and it can use those facts for good or for not good. But that's not the point of the consciousness evolution. It's not about the material facts. That's irrelevant. This is just a virtual reality where we get to make choices. And the facts of the rule set are neither here nor there. That doesn't evolve the quality of a consciousness, how many facts it knows about the rule set. It gives its consciousness player a lot more choices because it's got a lot of facts. So yes, the consciousness can maybe do more with it, can build a nifty bridge or something because it's got that understanding. But that doesn't actually affect the quality of the consciousness. The quality of the consciousness, which is the idea of the entropy of the consciousness, whether it's high entropy and causing issues or whether it's low entropy and fixing issues, that only has to do with the being level, what's really in there. So though learning facts in a virtual reality is helpful to the player in a way that it gives them more choices, if their avatar is just really stupid and doesn't do anything but sit and stare at a wall, then there's not a lot of choices going on there. There's not a lot of growth. There's not a lot of opportunity. It's just not much happening. Whereas if they're out there doing things and interacting and connecting and whatever, then there's lots of choices. So it's better for the consciousness to evolve if there is intellectual learning, but it has really nothing to do with consciousness quality. Consciousness quality is to do with the real you, not how well you can act.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. That clarifies it. So I had a little follow-up, because our intellectual memory does get deleted at the end of an experience packet, and then we start the next experience packet with a fresh slate, so to speak, intellectually. And this memory deletion, it actually helps consciousness evolution because it removes all the baggage, as you explained. So I was wondering if this memory deletion aids consciousness evolution with us. Does the system somehow apply this also to beings outside of PMR?
Only if they reincarnate. If the beings outside of PMR reincarnate, then yes, when they reincarnate blank of intellectual memory. But if they don't reincarnate, and they don't all reincarnate, there are some that just kind of live out there in a very simple virtual reality, outside of a PMR like virtual reality. And they just kind of hang out and do their own thing. Some even form communities and whatever in virtual realities that don't have tight rule sets and aren't physical. And those that don't reincarnate just keep on keeping on. They don't have to have that wipe. It's just one continuous thing. They're just interacting forever, I guess. I've never actually looked at the long term for those. I've been to plenty of those places where there's just beings that are there, but I don't know. There's another consideration there. When you go someplace in like in an out of body and you find beings somewhere, well, out of body, as I've come to realize, is like a single player game. Now, are all those other people in that virtual reality just NPCs in a single player game meant for for your own interaction, and they don't really exist otherwise? Like when you're playing World of Warcraft, there's people that give you missions and quests to go on, and there's monsters that live in the cave and that you have to beat, and there's all these things going on that are just NPCs. It's characters that the computer puts there to make the game interesting for you. And then there are players like you who are in the game, and they have to get by the boss and do the quests. Well, when I go out of body, is it a single player game for me to interact and make choices, and all those other creatures are just NPCs taking up space to give me a context for the choices that I make? Could be. How would I know? I wouldn't. You just don't know. You get a data stream, and that data stream is your reality. So you never
Yeah.
know where that data comes from or the intention behind that data. So I don't really know whether that's true, but I've been to places that looked like they had colonies of individuals who had lived there in a long time, have histories there, and so on. And I've interacted with those, but were they all just NPCs for my to build up context for the environment, for the choices that I would make, or were they actual beings that just kind of hang out in those places? I don't really know, and there's no way to find out. So
Yes.
I don't know how that really is. I've had seen, I've been there and seen these beings. I've interacted with them some, um, but I never had a sense of long-term time. What happened? Well, yeah, they were generations. They'd have grandparents and great grandparents, and it's like they just progressed. They didn't all live forever. They died. But now that I think of it, I think it's more likely that they were probably just NPCs put there for part of the ambience and interaction for me to have in this out of body. I think a lot of out of bodies are like that. The critters we meet. Now I could talk to them, carry on conversations. They're just like anybody else. It's just that they don't have an independent free will. They just act out a role. So I'm guessing that that's probably more of what they were than anything else. So I would say there's no point in erasing somebody's intellectual memory unless they reincarnate. Other than that, there's no point in it. In a reincarnation, there is a point in it. It's very helpful. And how many
Yeah.
people are outside of those are in those virtualities? And I was thinking, well, I've run into lots of them. There may be hundreds and thousands and millions of them. And now I think about it, maybe none of them exist. They all may be NPCs, you see.
Yeah. Wow. Now, I was thinking that maybe there is a use to it in the sense that we tend to paint ourselves in a corner intellectually, and this memory deletion, it kind of it's like a little reset. You know,
Mm,
it's like we can get ourselves stuck into a local minimum. To put it in mathematical terms,
right.
and we can have a little reset to as like a protection mechanism, so we can keep on evolving. And if there would
Yes.
be beings that wouldn't have that, if they would just like continually keep having the same intellect, then they could get stuck in a corner and just be stuck in the corner for eternity.
Yeah. Or they could just die and that's it. Maybe they just have a one-off life, and they just die and are gone.
I just completely,
Everything everything else just comes in, lives until they die, and then after they die, they're done. There may not be a continuing thing. That could be a possibility as well too. But thinking about all of that, I get more and more likely that they're all NPCs anyway, and that all the people who are really on a track to evolve, or IUOCs that are on a track to evolve, are all playing inside of a PMR someplace where there's lots of choices and things to go, and you do reincarnate over and over again, as opposed to just hanging out in some virtual reality somewhere and just dying because your lifespan's only so long and you do what you do and that's it. I would think the ability of that to give back to the system, the ability of that to generate lower entropy is probably very, very small, and therefore it wouldn't make sense to do that. It'd just be a waste of time. So yeah,
yeah.
probably all NPCs.
It's interesting how little we know in the end.
Absolutely, that's the way it is. But we know everything we need to know, and
Yeah.
we've got this choice in front of us, and everything we need to know is that we do the best we can at making that choice, and then we look back at it and see. We either congratulate ourselves or we try to find what went wrong and why it went wrong and fix it.
Yes.
So,
That's all we need to know. Yeah, like I was thinking about that just a while ago because MBT does explain a lot. But if you look at it, we start with the assumption consciousness exists, and that has so many things like time and free will and qualia, and we just assume that into existence, which is it still keeps it quite mysterious, and it's so fundamental to everything. And then if you add to that, we don't even know what we're really interacting with. It could all be NPCs, or if it has like objective existence out there, we just don't know. So in the end, we don't really know what we are, and we don't really know what we interact with. We
and
just have
it,
to like kind of do our best with it.
and it's actually even worse than that. There's no way to know. So it's not that we're just stupid and haven't figured it out yet. There's no
Right.
way to know because your reality is defined by a data stream. And it's actually not defined by the data stream, it's defined by your interpretation of the data stream. Period. That's your reality. Where that data stream comes from and why it was sent to you, you don't know. You don't ever get that. You know that you can get data streams from other IUOCs, from yourself, and from, quote, the system, unquote, right? And that's why the system is really just a metaphor. It's a metaphor for that source out there that seems to be in charge, because that's a function. It has to happen. Something has to be out there to be in charge. Otherwise, the system doesn't work. It's irrational. So then you have a metaphor for the larger conscious system because that's a function that needs to exist for me to experience the things I experience. You need that. So that gets put in the model. But yes, it's either you produce it yourself because you're consciousness, you can produce data streams. It comes from another IOC because they're also conscious and can produce a data stream, or it comes from the larger system. That's it. But none of those come with little tags on them to tell you which is which. So you not only don't know, but you can't know. It's impossible to know. But you can make sense out of it because you can look at it as a system. And this is the way I started with my model. When I was first out at Bob's, and I had no idea how anything worked. And yes, it was very difficult finding facts, about how things worked. But what I did, I says, it does work. And it does work well because here I am. And here other people are. So because it's orderly, there must be rules. Because it's orderly and seems to have direction, because I could see out of my years there that I was growing up, that I was changing, that I was becoming a different person. And I felt like I was on a path that was a good path to be on. So I said, it seems like it's orderly. It has purpose. It has, it's not just random stuff going on. Well, anything that has rules and that has purpose like that, then you're talking about a system of something. Because if it's not a system, then you just have randomness. A system is defined by parts that work together. Well, work together is not random. Work together means work together for some purpose, right? So I have basically looked at reality and said reality obviously is ordered. It's not just random. Therefore, there are rules ordering it. Therefore, there are reasons for these rules and places these rules come from. And I just kind of work back from that. So it's not that you can't know anything. You can know that there's a system. And then I work backward from those rules. And I say, well, okay, here's the rules that allow this to happen. And I backed it up. And I ended up with my model. That's how I ended up with the model that I had. I just started with the fact that obviously entropy was not, high. Everything wasn't random. There's order. Well, order doesn't just happen for no reason. Order just doesn't happen in randomness because, for no apparent reason. It may, a little order could happen in randomness, but it doesn't stay. It disappears. It may come and it may go, but randomness doesn't produce something that is as stable and ongoing with purpose and so on as this place. So then it was just a matter, well, if this is based on rules of some sort, follow the rules and find the rules and the reasons for the rules. And then I just started working from where I was outward from there to discover the rules. And that's why it took me a long time. You just that was my thought process. And I ended up with my model with MBT from doing that because there is rationality in it. There is purpose in it. And the thing is, the fundamental sense of science, just talking about science as opposed to just random acts, actually doing things for purposes that make sense and are rational in that form, then the purpose of a model or the way you judge a model, if a good model or a bad model, is just, does it explain the facts you know? Does it explain new facts that you don't know yet, but you find out, whether they're true or not? How many assumptions does it have? The fewer the better. And if it explains everything that you know, all the facts you know, it explains some of the stuff that you didn't know, but now you do because it explains them. It has very few assumptions. Then it's a good model. That makes a good model. It doesn't make it true. It just makes it a good model. And so that's what you have to work with. So that's, so that's kind of it. And So I come up with this model just because it explained all the experiences I had. And it explained, the experiences I'm still having. And it solves all these paradoxes. And it seems to do pretty well at explaining things. And it's only got really one assumption, which is just consciousness exists. Because if consciousness exists as a self-changing information system, then evolution is obvious. Evolution has to exist because it's going to self-change. It's self-changing. So it self-changes according to its purpose and so on. So the evolution is really a given as a subset, a logical subset of consciousness. So it really has only one assumption starting, and that is consciousness exists. And since it's so obvious that it does exist, because you and I are sitting here talking, and I know I make choices, and I know those choices change things. It just seemed, that was my process. Order defines some sort of reasonableness, some sort of intent. Things aren't disorderly and this well designed by randomness. It doesn't just happen this way. It has to be some intention involved in it, which is the problem with materialism, because it starts, with the rule set and everything just there. Well, where did all that rule set come from? It's just miraculously is there. And after that, well, it can predict everything that'll happen, right? Because it's deterministic. But it can't tell you anything about how it started and where all those rules came from and why those rules were like that. And it doesn't say anything about them, whereas my model does. It talks about those rules and why they would be necessary and where it comes from. If you start with consciousness, you can kind of make sense of it all. So that was my direction. You're right. We can know very little of anything for sure. Very, very little of anything, except that this world does make sense in the sense that it's coherent, it's logical, it's got a reason for it being there. And now let's try to figure out what the reasons are, and what why the coherences are there the way they are. And so then I just started making a model, and until I got to where I am today. So yes, true. We know very, very, very few facts. And what I have is no more than a model. And being a model that works pretty well doesn't mean it's true. Now, the fact that this model explains so much, as I went on, I got more and more confident of it. When I first published it, it's like, well, this is my model, but maybe it's true, maybe it's not true. It's just the best thing I could do with my experience I had, which happened to be bigger than most people's experience because I got with Bob Monroe and my experience went outside of the normal experience, plus the normal experience, and I had to fit all those pieces together. But I didn't have a whole lot of confidence in the model because I just made it up because it made sense of everything that I knew. All the facts and things that I had established that this is the way this world is. These are the kind of rules that we work by here. And it fit all those. But as the years went by, we're 20 years past the time when I published the book. As the years went by, and I found more and more things that it explained, more and more paradoxes solved, more and more things like that, then I've pretty much come to the opinion that you couldn't get that much right if it was largely wrong. Now, it doesn't mean it's perfect. There can be errors in it and things that are wrong or things that are just not said yet. But you couldn't have that. You shouldn't be able to understand that much from it if it was way off the course, if it wasn't mostly correct. So now I've gotten a lot more confidence in it, and I say I think it's at least mostly correct. This is generally the way reality works, because it seems to overlie very nicely with Buddhism. You asked me a bunch of questions about Buddhism. Well, the Buddhists do this and you do that differently. What is that? And mostly I can answer those questions pretty well, why that is. And those answers make pretty good sense. But the good thing is that 99% of MBT and Buddhism are like that. They're very similar. They come to a lot of the same conclusions. And then the same thing for Taoism and the same thing for for shaman, I can see how all that stuff that and the shaman and the indigenous people and the things that they do, and they become eagles and wolves and do stuff, and sure, can do all that too. I can see that that's not. It's just a different viewpoint. They've just got this viewpoint, and they don't see the whole picture, but they see this viewpoint. Okay, so that's what the world looks like from that viewpoint, and I can see that. So there's every viewpoint that I've been able to find basically is subsumed in the MBT viewpoint. It's not like, well, that viewpoint just doesn't fit. That just can't be that way because MBT just would never get do that. But it's not like that. All these things that have subsisted for a long time, they all just kind of fit in pretty well. Yeah, a lot of that viewpoint is a lot of that's is handed down, and some of it's dogma and so on. I can see that, but the basics of it fit pretty nicely. Whether it's a shamanistic thing, or whether it's the Kabbalah, or whether it's the Gnostics, or whether it's the Buddhist or the Shinto, or whatever it is, you can see that the basics of it kind of fit. People who originated these things, like the Buddha and like Muhammad, they actually had a pretty big understanding of the way things worked. And they wrote about it, and a lot of people agreed with them. And, 1,000 years later, all kinds of dogma and crap, have attached itself to that because that had power, and everybody wants power. So you can see how it all just kind of disintegrates. The Buddhists have done pretty well. They were one of the early ones, but they've kept it pretty reasonable. Although there's 100 different kinds of Buddhism, right? There's all kinds of sects that all disagree with each other, just like there is in Christianity. But anyway, that's how I made the model. But yes, you're absolutely right. If you want to know, well, what are the facts that we know for sure? Well, one, consciousness exists. And after that, it's all kind of, this is what makes sense. But these aren't facts. This is just a model of how the facts we have make sense. So that's kind of where we are. But I agree. See, I just was more recently, probably in the last 5 or 10 years, I got to the point that I realized out of bodies were just single player games for the most part. And that was a really good metaphor for it. So now I kind of reevaluate, the stuff that places I'd gone, the people I'd seen. If those were all single player games, then they were probably NPCs there for my lessons. So it simplifies things. This very complex, very whatever non-physical space with all these different things starts to simplify a whole lot. And it's not quite as large and varied as it seems. There's just a lot of different virtual, a lot of virtual realities a lot of people get. That's because that's what they need to see. That's the space they need to get into to learn the next thing they have to learn. So you get all these people going out of bodies, and they all seem to represent some totally different picture of reality. Well, they're all single player games for the most part. They're not representing a whole reality. They're representing a little one-off single player game made just for them to help them grow up.
And how do you feel about those other reality frames that you visited in that sense? Like you
Yeah.
talked about some of them that were especially high entropy. Do you
Yes.
see, do you still
Yeah.
give that
I
a
don't
high
know.
likelihood of being out there, or
Don't know. I have no idea. It's just up for grabs because I can see, I know why I was sent there. I was sent there just to get a sense of the possibilities, you know, see all the kind of possibilities where things could go and how it could go. It's not just this virtual reality, it's just the one-off. There, I had the idea that the LCS would not put all its eggs in one basket. That it would be better to have multiple virtual realities because you never know how boneheaded these people with free will that are running the avatars around, what they might do. So if they totally self-destruct, well, that didn't work out. You might not want all your eggs in one basket because they can self-destruct. So I would think, well, there's probably more around that. If I were the LCS, I wouldn't put it all on one petri dish and see how it grew. I'd have a whole bunch of experiments going and a lot of different petri dishes to see how they developed. So that was my thought of it's rational to have more than one. But then on the other hand, balancing that is how many seats does the system need? You remember, you've heard me go through that argument. So how many seats does the system need? It doesn't need to populate every planet that could be populated in our universe, because that would be hundreds of billions of more critters that all have to have a data stream. Is that necessary? Is it going to get that much out of that? 100 million, now 100 million and one. Oh, great. That one's going to contribute a lot that the other 100 million won't. Now, I see that curve for systems and it says, well, there's a sweet point someplace after which the cost is greater than the benefit. So if that's the case, then, how many seats does it need? Well, it's got 8 billion seats here. Was a larger conscious system need more than 8 billion seats to evolve itself efficiently? Probably not. So you see, I have some competing ideas. Well, put all the eggs in one basket? That's not a good idea. On the other hand, it's a pretty secure basket. It is just the LCS. It's not like there's marauders coming from, some other consciousness system that are breaking baskets. I don't know. You see,
Yeah.
and besides, the LCS could always, it's digital. They could always stop it at some point. Okay, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to start up from there later on. Okay, this self-destructed. So I'm going to go back to the year 2026 when things were still working well before the nukes destroyed everything. And I'll take that and we'll start back up from there. Possibility they could start back up from there. It is a digital system. We're part of that digital system. We are too part of that system. So there isn't any reason that it couldn't start back up from someplace else. And maybe the system doesn't care about how many eggs are in one or in a single basket. Maybe it feels perfectly secure with just one trial. I don't know. So there's a lot of questions there that are kind of competing, and you think about it and you say, well, eggs in the basket, maybe not. Maybe it's pretty secure. One basket's all you need. And how many seats do you need? Well, there's a data stream for every seat. When's enough? And more than that's too many. After all, it's just a system trying to evolve. So you juggle all these things and you kind of come up with what seems to be the most rational.
Yes.
Make the most sense, and then you kind of go with that. But do I know? Am I talking about facts? No, of course not. The only fact I know is that consciousness exists and it's fundamental. Everything else is derived. And I know facts of my experience here. I know a lot of facts out of my experiences in the non-physical. I know I can heal. I know I can modify things. I know I get information that's correct that I shouldn't have from any physical viewpoint. I know that happens all the time. So yes, I know there is information out there that can tell me how healthy you are. I know there's information out there that can tell me all sorts of things. So I know all those. And yes, those are facts because I can get them. I can repeat them. I know them. So I got lots of facts about how the world works, physical and non-physical. Now all I have to do is come up with something rational and logical that describes all those facts. But all the facts are facts that I know. That's why it's my big toe. If I hadn't had all that time with Monroe and doing that, there's a whole bunch of facts I have now that I wouldn't have. And my model would not explain paranormal things because maybe paranormal wouldn't even be on my map as a possibility. But it is. And I learned a lot of facts about consciousness in the larger system that most people don't know are facts. Well, all those paranormal things. There's a lot of facts I have out there, and they're facts because they're repeatable. You can do them over and over again, and it's always there. And it's all like that for everybody. It's not just special cases or one-offs. It's always for everyone there. So to me, that makes a fact. And so my model just tries to describe some system that could account for all the facts. And I do that just because I guess I got a lot of facts all over the place, so I could string all this together. But how much is certain knowledge and facts as far as the system goes and why it's there and how it got there and whatever, not a clue. I don't
Yes.
know about any of that. And as far as I know, that's unreachable. It's not a failure to understand. It's a impossibility.
Yes.
Those facts aren't available. I get a data stream. I don't get somebody showing me the computer that makes it, or anything else. I don't know
Well,
where that data stream comes from.
that's still nice. At least we know why we can't know.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, my son, when he was 18 and he read MBT, and he was really bummed out that that there was things that we couldn't know. In his mind, we could know everything. We just hadn't gotten there yet. We just hadn't understood everything there is to understand. But eventually, we could know everything. And I said, no, there's some things you can't know. They're just logically outside of your realm to know. And
Yeah,
he rejected that immediately, but eventually came to agree with it.
that's a
That was
tough pill to swallow.
yes, it is, particularly if you're young and planning on knowing everything.
Yes.
Only just a few more days and I'll know everything.
I and MBT Events hope you liked this video. We will continue to post videos for free on my YouTube channel, but please understand, these videos are expensive to produce. They represent many thousands of hours of production and editing, as well as all the necessary audiovisual equipment, computers, and software. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. It would be very much appreciated. The links are in the description below. Thank you.